Hello and welcome today at Kino Film Festival, International Festival of Young Audience. And our guest today is Brazilian filmmaker Cássio Pereira dos Santos, the director of the movie Valentina. Welcome, Cássio.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here talking to you guys.
And my first question will be about your motivations, because the movie tells the story about a young transgender girl who moves with her mother to a new town. Could you tell us what made you decide to touch this very topic?
Sure. Valentina is our first feature film. So 7 years ago, I was talking to the producer about the themes, about the subject that we were covering the first feature. And we started the research. And during this research, we got to the fact, to these statistics, that says that 80% of transgender students, they drop out of school in Brazil because the school environment is not inclusive and they suffer a lot of bullying, psychological violence, even physical violence. And these kids, they drop out of school because the school is not inclusive. So we decided that it should be the main topic of the film, because before that, there was no film about this issue yet. And we decided that it was important to talk about this and to bring awareness about this theme in the Brazilian society and even in other countries, because it happens in Brazil, but we know that it happens in other countries as well. So we decided to choose this topic, to choose this character, to portray this reality and maybe try to spread awareness and through discussions, maybe it can change. People can be more, can accept more. They can be less. There can be less prejudice, and that's why we decided to make this film.
And could you tell us more about the difficult situation of a transgender student in Brazil?
Sure. In fact, the school, it's kind of a mirror from society, because transgender persons, they are really marginalized here in Brazil, unfortunately. So if you go to the streets, you can see transgender persons in prostitution and marginalized situations. And if these persons, they are there because they are marginalized, because they don't have access to education. So everything starts in the school. For example, nowadays there's a law that allows Brazilian kids to enroll with their social name, Brazilian trans kids to enroll with their social name in the schools. But some principals, some of the school staff, they are not really aware of this law. So when there's a parent with a trans kids, for example, and they want to enroll in the school, they have to explain everything to the principal. They have to bring the papers and show the proofs that there is this law. I mean, little by little, the visibility is getting a little better, but the situation is very difficult. For example, last week, there was a video that went kind of viral with a trans girl being threatened by a transgender colleague in the school because she wanted to use the girls' bathroom, the girls' toilet in the school. So there are several issues that the transgender communities are facing, like the use of bathroom and several other prejudice and violence they are still facing, unfortunately.
I think it's a very universal topic, because in Poland, I think we have very similar problems. Maybe because Poland and Brazil, in many cases, are very conservative countries.
Yeah.
But I think the final scene of the movie, which I think is really well written, gives us some hope. Do you think there is a change on the horizon?
Yes, I think the trans community has been organizing themselves, and they're getting access to certain laws, like the use of social name. There has been a lot of good news, but also there are a lot of things to overcome for the community. At the same time, I believe that the younger generation, they are a little bit more open than the previous generations. They are being aware of the trans rights, mostly because the trans community was fighting. So today there's a little bit more visibility. And I believe that the young generations, they are changing little by little. And there are some hope in the air as well. Although the moment is conservative, the society is conservative, I believe the new generations are starting to change. And that's why we decided to do this ending of the film that brings a little bit of a positive view and a little bit of hope. We believe society is changing little by little.
And how the film was received in Brazil? In particular, I'm curious how young Brazilians perceive it.
Yes, the film was released in Brazil, first of all, at film festivals. And last month, we had a Netflix release here in Brazil and Latin America. And that's when we really started receiving a lot of feedbacks from young persons on Twitter and Letterboxd and a lot of social media. And especially in Tiesa's, the main actress, she has a big Instagram account. And we've been receiving several very, very good feedback about the film. For example, one kid told that she watched the film with her mom. And after her mom watched the film, her mom became less transphobic and stopped doing transphobic jokes. And she changed her mentality because she saw the film. And also there was, for example, a transgender boy. He was to the transportation company to get charged his transportation card, and he showed his old ID. And the clerk who was helping him told, come on, you can tell me your social name, your new name. You don't have to bring your old ID. Didn't you see Valentina on Netflix? You are supposed to use your name. We should respect. I was moved by the film. I was emotional. So it's very nice to receive this kind of feedback, because we are noticing that these little films, they have the potential to change minds, to change little by, maybe not a big change, but little by little. I think we are changing the mentality with the film.
Great story. That film make a great job. And works in the society. And I have one question about more technical part of the movie, but maybe not much technical, because I'm curious about the process of the casting, because the cast of the film is, I think, one of the biggest sides of it, much more interesting parts, when the dynamic between the young characters creates really nice feeling about the characters. And I'm curious if that young actors are professionals or just started their career in the cinema.
They just started. The main actress, Chiesa Weinbeck, she's a trans woman. She has, before the film, she was a YouTuber. She already was familiar with the camera, but in a different situation on YouTube. And she was familiar with the camera, but that was the first time she was acting in a movie. So she was a first timer as well. And her colleagues, Ronaldo and Leticia, they were students at the university. One of them was student theater, but no experience with cinema before. And the other one was a design student at the local university. So they were young. They were similar to the characters of the film, but most of the young cast, they was not familiar with film language before. They had no experience with acting before.
Especially the actress which played Valentina, Teresa. It's very charismatic, and is a great casting. How you find her?
Maybe 6 months before the shooting, our cast director, Erika, and Pedro, that was the cast researcher, they published a call for applications from trans women from all over Brazil. They could send short videos to our production, to the casting department. And Chiesa was one of the women that recorded her own video. It was an improvisation within a scene. And we discovered her through this video. So it was very, very democratic, because every transgender woman and girl could send us the video. And that's the way we found Chiesa, through a video that she sent through the internet.
And one last question. again about the social part of the film, because it shows a rich landscape of I think, the Brazilian society. It shows representation of many minorities, not only gender but also sexual, and I think the racial groups in case of Brazil are also very important. And this case was the plan of the beginning, from the beginning, or just appeared after the casting because you find great actors and it happened like that.
Yeah, I think we had this objective of making a very diverse crew and a very diverse characters and casting, and that because the film is talking about the acceptance and inclusion, not only about the transgender inclusion, but you have the gay boy, the pregnant girl, and Afro-Brazilians, and a lot of diversity included in the film. So we decided that because of the theme, and because Brazil is a very diverse country, we decided that it was important to have a lot of representation. For example, 52% of the Brazilian population is of Afro-Brazilians. So it was important to have this representation as well. So Brazil is a huge country with different people, and we decided that it was very fundamental to have everybody represented. Not everybody, but a good amount of persons and different people represented.
I'm sure that the film will be well received also here in Poznań, because as I said, the topics are also familiar for Polish people. And I think one day, if you will come to Kino Film Festival, maybe next edition, we will talk about your next films. And I hope one day we will meet here in Poznań. Thank you very much for the short discussion, and see you soon, maybe in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for selecting the film. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.